Good morning. All right, so something you're going to have to get used to. You have to get used to this. I am all about good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I do that all the time. It helps me to not only greet people, but it also helps me to know that you are with me. So we'll do it again. Good morning. It's okay. Get used to it. This has been such a good week this week, as far as getting into the first week of school and seeing students come to campus and having so many folks just come in and trickle back in on campus and having what I call a live campus with people that we at levels we haven't seen in the past couple of years. And so to me, that is an awesome thing to see. We were walking in just a little while ago, walking through the center, and students around, students talking, a couple of them stopping. Hey, can I get a selfie? And I'm thinking, you don't want to get a selfie with this, but anyway, that's just, gets action back on campus, and so it's such a good week. And now getting into this part of the week where not only celebrate Founders Day, but also this Founders Day celebration culminating tonight with a football game. And as I said last night when we were doing our Link with Pink here and kicked that off last night in Big Rapids, I just love, and I'm talking a lot of trash about Central Washington. I'm going to text Coach Anise and say, hey, I'm talking trash, you better win. Because I having spent years in athletics as a player and as a coach myself, it was always a joy when teams came up from afar to get their butts kicked and then go back home. I like that. I mean, that probably sounds horribly mean. It's just that competitor in me. Because when you have young men and young women who get out on the court, on the field, represent your institution and play, when you realize all the things that they do leading up to that game in preparation for the game, but also just in all the other things they do to keep the grades going, keep all those things where they need to be, realizing, as I did as a student athlete, if the grades aren't in the right place, you're not going to get to play. And so the motivation is there, but also just the pride in university is there. And so one of the elements I really love about athletics is how we, as the community, wrap our support around those young men and women who represent us on the field and on the court. And so tonight we get an opportunity to do that. And whether that be those folks in athletics, whether that be our folks in fine arts, or whatever those areas are that our students represent us, to be able to not only encourage them by our words, but encouraging them by our presence. And so you will find from me, as we are blessed to be here, that we will engage with those things quite often, because our student athletes and our students who represent us across the university, they need our support. They want to know that the university that they represent has their back. And so looking forward to tonight, looking forward to watching many of those events to come. So to our audience that's that's streaming, welcome, glad to have you as a part of this Founders Day address. I chose this morning that my first Founders Day conversation is going to be wrapped around just what we're thinking in terms of the question you'll see in a little bit, the question I'm asked most when it comes to these last 8 weeks of being at Ferris State. I'll get to that in a second, but as I said, welcome. And these first 8 weeks have been really filled with quite a bit of things. First of all, having had several meetings and breakfasts and all these different opportunities in engaging with many of you, with our faculty and staff, that has been a joy, because one way you learn more about an institution is when you really engage with the people who are boots on the ground doing the daily work, and to understand better what your life is like, and to be able to not only understand it, but also from my own personal perspective, be able to remember some of the positions that I've been blessed to have in my career, how they really align to some of the things that you're doing. And so having some of those conversations and continuing those will be helpful to where we're going. Also connecting with students, not only when some of our resident assistants made it to campus, some of our athletic teams, but now I will tell you that one of the most enjoyable things this week has been riding around on a golf cart, talking and giving students a ride to class. So that has been very interesting, because to sit with students on a golf cart and have someone else drive, because you don't want me driving a golf cart and talking, to ride around with them and ask them about their life. Ask them, what are you doing here? Why Ferris State? What are you doing as far as your program? Where are you from? And where do you want that degree to take you? And having that conversation with students, friends, 99% of them, I think I counted one who said, I'm not sure yet. And I said, it's okay. You're a freshman. Don't worry about it. You don't have to make that decision today. Now, tomorrow but to have so many of them say, oh, well, here's my major and here's what I want to do with that. And even here's where I want to do that. That is such a fun conversation to have, and to engage with them at that level has been so fun. I've mentioned the story that last week when we were helping some of our students move in to their dorm. Again, here I am in the golf cart, so I've got water in the back and I've got space in the back to put luggage or put whatever, refrigerators. You would be surprised some of the no, you wouldn't, of what some students bring. So I remember one student, I'm helping her and her friend move in, and one of the moms was with me, and so I said, here, Mom, hop in. And so we were driving, and I said, hey, how's she doing? Because this was a freshman moving in. I said, how's she doing? She said, I think she's going to be okay. She's has already kind of getting friends and already kind of getting engaged a little bit with people. I think she's going to be okay. I said, but how are you doing? Mom started to tear up. She said, I'm not doing well. She said, she thinks that I'm going to be partying now that she's gone. She said, this is the first time in 30 years that I've been alone. I said, I get it. I get it. And it immediately reminded me that we probably need to have a parent counseling session during move-in, because of how many of our parents are going through similar experiences with seeing, in her case, it was the last child. And so having those experiences here these last couple of weeks, engaging with students, always, it gives energy. Industry connections. So in these short 8 weeks, we've been able to have various conversations with different industry partners that not only have been a part of Ferris State, but in some cases, some of the partners that we had during our time at GRCC to now come to Ferris State and say, okay, now you remember all I said about GRCC and what we do. Now let's talk about what we do at Ferris State. And so what's been fun about that is starting to engage more of those folks who in some cases do not have a relationship as far as Ferris State is concerned. Rest assured, they will now. Because those are companies, businesses, partnerships to bring to the table for us as Ferris State University to say, how is it that you want to engage with us? And those have been really, really fun conversations, and hopefully here in the coming weeks have a really, really fun announcement to make in some of that. So it's just a process to continue to build that collaborative partnership, because that's what we're really built on as far as I'm concerned of leadership. And then the last thing is to take those community college connections that we have had over the past 7 years here in Michigan, some of those connections that we've had also across the country of community colleges, to say, all right, now as I'm at Ferris State, let's talk about how Ferris State further engages with you. Let's talk about what that pathway looks like today and what it can look like in the future. And let's talk about how this institution having a doctorate in community college leadership program. Let's talk about how we can even work closer with you, community college, with that program in terms of helping better prepare your workforce, your leadership for tomorrow. And so those conversations already starting up, spent some really good time. Provost Fleischman and I at North Central Michigan College up in Petoskey just this week. Their Monday morning kickoff as far as their school year is concerned, Monday morning was when they bring their faculty and staff together, and we were able to go up and be the keynote for welcoming them. Anytime a community college asks me as a Ferris State University president, would you come and speak? Yes, because that's a connection and conversation that when we walk out the door, those people, the goal is for them to be fired up about the semester, but the bigger goal is for them to be fired up about the relationship that Ferris State has and will continue to have and build in the future. So more of that to come. There's a few other things with that. And then just meeting people. This community of Big Rapids, Mecosta County, as I said last night at the Link with Pink, given the fact that my wife grew up in Mecosta County and just a few miles away from here, she's a Chippewa Hills grad. She lived in Remus growing up. I have to be careful with everything I say because every one of you may be a cousin to her. I just don't, I get it all the time. Oh yeah, we're related to the Perrys. Yeah, I had a feeling you were. So I have to be careful in Mecosta County because of the family connections, and I have to, So as I said, the main question is, what is your vision? That's been the main question these last, actually dating even before the 8 weeks started. Once we had this appointment and it was announced, immediately that was the question. So what's the vision? What do you have in mind for Ferris State? Well, what you will see coming up sometime in early to mid-October is that I plan to have a document that we will share out with campus that'll more define this mission and as far as my vision is concerned of what I have summed up as where we can go as an institution. As I said last night over at the Link with Pink, I believe that one of the main words that describes Ferris State University to me, aside from what you have been doing for over 130 years, the main word I have is potential. The potential that this institution has, that I think when we think truly about where we are in higher education today and where we will need to be, there are some things that you and I will do together, and you'll hear me say that all the time. It's not a me, it's a we, that we will do together in truly shaping what the opportunities will look like for students across this state and how we reach out even beyond the state. So here are the things that we'll talk about today, very briefly. What I call the Ferris State demographic, where we have to think in terms of who are the students we serve. Also, what our local work needs to look like, what we shared last night here in Big Rapids. And then number 3 is just sharing out some preliminary on what the plan looks like when it comes to those 2 cities, Detroit and Grand Rapids. Sharing that with you, as well as the last thing, what does the concept of data-driven statewide focus looks like? What is that? What's that all about? And so with what I share with you, it's these things that just say, here's what I see, here's what I think we can do. Now, one of the things about this, as you hear me talk about this, none of this is something that I say, written in stone, this is what we're doing. This is my vision that I will share, and I share with you as a campus community, and then we work together to say, what should that look like? What should that be? You'll hear me talk about, here's what I'm thinking, because this is one of the advantages of being an outsider coming in, is that I had the opportunity for the last 7 years in Grand Rapids to see Ferris State from the outside and look at a university and say, boy, that is awesome, but if I were them, I would be thinking about. So now that our board of trustees decided that I'm the person to put in this spot, I get to say, hey, all those ideas you had, let's see if we can get down the track on those. And I'm a believer in being innovative. I'm a believer in being creative. I'm a believer in hearing your innovative thinking and your creative thinking. Because what I find quite often is that when we have all these ideas from a president's standpoint, I have all these ideas, what happens is that some of the best ideas come from the very people who are doing the 10-foot digging rather than the 50,000-foot digging. So you'll have opportunities throughout the time that I'm blessed to be here to ask you those questions. So what do you think about what we should be doing? Because some of the things that you deal with every day, what you find is that you sit there and you look at things and you say, boy, if we were doing this, and sometimes those equate to efficiencies, sometimes those equate to even revenue generation, and sometimes it equates to just what's right to do for students and for people. And so those are going to be the kind of conversations we have to have, because it's not a me, it's a we. So let's get into the first one, the Ferris State demographic. So here's what I mean by that. We will never, at least as long as I'm here, we will never take our eye off of the traditional college student. The 18-year-old who graduates from high school, comes to Ferris State, we will never take our eye off of how we recruit and retain and help to complete the education of those students. Never should we. But I will tell you, as I've been sharing, that there is another group that I believe, we have some on campus and some as a part of Ferris State, that I believe we have to have a more concentrated focus on. Because what we know about that first line item is that that number at the top, that traditional college, that traditional graduate, high school graduate, we know from data that that number is shrinking. And no one has made any secrets about that. Those are national data, those are statewide data, that it's just an arithmetic, it's a math game. That when you see the number of students who are graduating from high schools, and when you see the numbers of students that are leaving middle school into high school, it trickles on down. As a matter of fact, when you look at the data, I want to say it's somewhere in elementary, some of the students who are right now in elementary school, there's some classes down there that are kind of starting to have some level of number rebound. But what we know right now is that for the coming years, that number is going to continue to go down. What that means is that here in the state of Michigan, with all of the higher ed institutions that are in this state, all of us, as we go after market share, that number is going to go down. It continues to go down. We're into it right now. Top of that, put over an overlay of that, this thing known as COVID-19. What that has done to that population is that has caused many of those in that population to shrink even more from a standpoint of whether or not they go to college, period. What we've been sharing is that what those data show us is that in many parts of our region here in Michigan, it's not only the number of high school graduates graduating shrinking, but when you look at those data, you also find that the number of students who are going to college anywhere is going down. We got to dig at that and find out why that's so. And we have to figure out what that is that we need to do in outreach to those students, not only to find out the why, but also to find out, so what does it take to get you back in? And how is Ferris State University the answer for that question of what it takes to get you back in? But what we also find in that number, consequently, in the state of Michigan, that number I have up there, 25 and plus. So individuals who are, and these are the data we see in the state of Michigan, individuals who are 25 years old and older, some or no college and no degree that fit that criteria. That's the demographic. 25 and older, some or no college at all, no degree. That number in our state is very large and is getting larger. So what does that mean? That means that many of those folks, some of them, yeah, they're doing okay. They're making it happen. They're doing their jam. They're fine. Many of those people, friends, work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. If you think about some of the people that you see and that you know in this community, you probably know and have seen some of those very individuals. College just didn't work for me. Got in, did a semester, did a year, didn't work for me. So now I have job at this place and this place and this place, and I'm still trying to take care of my family. Thank goodness I have a partner or a spouse. Those are the larger end that we see right now. And so the question for Ferris State, and I honestly believe it's the question for higher education, period, is how is it that we reach those students, potential students? What does that need to look like? And does that mean that as an institution, we need to rethink what that delivery looks like? Wait a minute, Pink. What are you saying? Yes, it might be that as a higher ed institution, and I'm just going to say it, I think there are a lot of our four-year friends all around the state and around the country that this is something that I think they have looked at, thought about, turned their head from, okay, maybe it'll get better. Let's talk about what happens when we think that way. Now I'm kind of skipping a few slides ahead, Bobby, I'm sorry. Because a few slides ahead, I talk about two words that you could probably start guessing what those two words are: being relevant, being responsive. What happens is that when you have that vision of things, when you decide, I see what they're doing, but I'm just going to turn my head and keep doing what I've been doing because that's just what I'm comfortable with. Here's what happens there. I always use the example of online education. Think about this. In higher education, the whole online conversation, many institutions have just ran from that. We don't need to do that. Students like to be in person. They want to, and the truth of the matter is, many students do. But the truth of the matter also is that there are those who actually not only enjoy, but actually benefit stronger from more of a hybrid delivery, in person and online, or even being fully online. Here's why. What we found out at the community college. We were an institution at CC that we've been doing online education for years. We've been doing that. Then COVID hit. And so all of a sudden, we had to step up drastically what we were doing in virtual learning. Here's what our students told us. And I'm just going to tell you, I don't think this is restricted to just a community college student. Our students told us, yes, I'm so happy that you guys are getting back to in person. Many of them told us that. More than we expected told us, I am so happy that I can access you now via online courses that you never offered online. You never offered that, so I'd reach a point, I can't even get classes anymore because those are online, because online fits my life better because I'm taking care of a family, I have a job, I have 2 jobs, and I can't access you. I can only access you for those you offered, then all of a sudden you didn't offer anything else, and I'm stuck. Thank you for offering more. Now I can finish. Friends, I'm just going to tell you that demographic that I just described to you, it would be easy for us to do what I said, just kind of turn our head and walk away and say, that's just not who we serve. What that does, if indeed we take what we do right now, we have online classes as an institution already, but when you have that type of thinking, what happens is that the world passes you by. Because when the world shifts, higher education and any industry partner I have and I know, their world shifted, they moved. If they didn't move, they're probably not around anymore. And if you don't move with the world, and again, what this means for us is that there are spaces that we always need to have students on this campus. Don't get me wrong, I'm not promoting that we become a University of Phoenix. That's not my job. My job is to figure out what that sweet spot looks like. And that's a fun place to be. Because now you're serving students at levels that they're saying, you know what? I can go to Ferris now. And it means there's a match and a mix to that. I think that's fun stuff to dig into. And so the third thing with that demographic, as you know, that community college graduate, that community college student that finishes at the college and says, what's my next? Where do I need to go? This institution, friends, ought to be the first one in mind of a majority of those students. I'm convinced of it. Because having been there the last 7 years at a community college, having seen what some of those difficulties are for students in matriculating, having seen that, I'm not going to mention the 4-year institute, not going to say it, I'm not going to violate, Having seen some of our four-year partners who get those students onto campus and tell them, hey, I know you did the associate degree, but 30 of those hours don't count toward anything we have here. We'll transfer them in, but they do not count anything towards your degree. I've seen that. I've had students come back and say, why are they doing this? And gosh, we tell them, we've been working with them, we've been trying to tell them what, because we knew that our students coming out of GRCC, we knew the level they're performing academically. Because our four-year partners, Ferris State being one, would tell us, Bill, when your students come, they're ready to go. They're ready for their classes. But when a student runs into those kind of roadblocks, it slows them down. It requires them to spend more money. And the debt just keeps piling up. So the idea is, how do we, as being that institution that is so partnered with community colleges, how do we look at them and say, how do we become even better with how we partner with you, so that the benefit of our students is sure? That right there, friends, I think is a major 99% of what I envision is the Ferris State demographic. And the one I left out would be those students who we service with our industry partners just directly. Some of that direct stuff we do to customize things for them, that's another thing, that's a whole nother story. That right there, that is what I see as our students. And my question becomes, how do we service those students? It doesn't mean that we hadn't been doing it before. Lord knows, we wouldn't be around for 130 years if we weren't. But it does say, in this world that we live in today, and it's a much different world than we've ever seen, how is it that the university services these students? So that's what I mean by that Ferris State demographic. Now let me talk about the local work. So what we talked about last night over at the Link with Pink event, what we have to do here locally, what I think is an opportunity, honestly. Because Ferris State, I think, is truly built for this. We've been doing the work for a good while. Now it's time for us to say, is it a more concentrated effort? Do we need to focus it a little different? So when I think about Mecosta County, Big Rapids, and surrounding, you and I both know that when it comes to the population that is here and around, there are many individuals that fit that demographic I told you about, 25. Some are no college, no degree, working a lot of jobs, working jobs that aren't really helping make ends meet. Maybe you're familiar with what the United Way calls the ALICE report. ALICE being asset limited, income constrained, and employed. That's what ALICE is. So what the United Way has done is that's a metric that they use to measure, rather than just looking at the poverty level, what's the ALICE level? So again, asset limited, income constrained, but still are employed. These are people that have jobs, they're working. But truly, they're working and get to the end of the week, end of the month, and it's a strain just to make sure ends meet, and then all of a sudden, here's the next week, and I gotta do it all over again. And many of these individuals, I mean, they're just this close. They are one car breakdown away from really having to do something different. And so we know that that's a population. And that population, friends, you could take some of the more affluent areas of the state of Michigan, and we still see in some of those large affluent areas, you still see a smaller demographic of ALICE and how that is reflected. And so the idea is, how is it that Ferris State University truly is able to pull some of those individuals in to really be able to say, you know what, we actually offer some really great certificates and degrees that can get you down the road on what you need to do to help take better care of yourself and your family. And you can do it because the thing that becomes very intimidating to people is just the name, Ferris State University. For many people, that's just a quick turnoff. I can't do that. I'm not college. I don't go to college. I'm not even built for that. It's the idea of how we break down that barrier and how we work with this community to say, how is it that this university can help give you those levels of what you need, help provide that for you, whatever that certificate is, whatever that associate or bachelor's degree is. How is it that we interact with you to help get you down the road? Last night, I spoke to a young lady who she had at the Link with Pink. She was the very person that fits this thing I'm describing. So here's what she did. She came up to me afterwards. She gave us, my wife and I, told us the story. By the way, look at that woman back there at the back. Please welcome my wife, Lori. Sorry, babe. Yeah, she said, no, you're not. So she came up to us afterwards. She told me the story that she said, because I talked about this very thing. She came up afterwards, she said, I was that person. She said, out of high school, she was local. Out of high school, she said, I did not go to college. Stayed out, did some other things, and then found out that it just wasn't working for me. And I decided to come back. But she talked about how many things were so intimidating to her about coming to Ferris. She was right here. But she said, I came anyway. She found the right people at this institution that said, come on, let's go, let's do this. We can do this. People like you, may have been some of you in here. Folks who work here who understood and said, here, come on, let's talk about this. Now, here we are years later. She has her bachelor's degree. But she is one of those individuals I said, we need to talk to you because you need to tell us what were those things that intimidated you? What were those things that helped you? You need to help us learn so that we can address you better, the next person that comes in. Because friends, there are plenty of them around us, as we said right now, that they would love to figure out how to engage. They're just not sure. Man, is that right? Can I do that? They need to be told, yes, you can. And need to be shown how to do that. And the way we do that is just in two words. We just do us, do me, do us. You know, we always, that my daughter will say, but Dad, you just do you. Okay, sweetie, I got you. But we do us. What we do. That's who we are. We just have to make sure people understand how to access who we are. And that it's okay. And it is a safe space to come. Because you know as well as I do, I think about the woman last night, and she walks into a classroom. She's expecting to see a bunch of 18-year-olds who who can do 3/4 of their social time on a phone, and she's just going, "Yeah, that's not me. I use my phone for phone calls." But she's looking at that, and she's going, "That's just not me. And I know what's there if I go there." We have to break that down to help them understand. No. You can get this too, because if you come in, what you will find is that there are some people who look just like you do, and they're thinking the very same thing. But friends, that's one of those pieces that we need to think, how is it that we have even better and stronger outreach to this community to bring them in to understand what it means to be a successful Ferris State University student, because they're not sure. And we can be the ones to deliver that to them. Okay, so plan. Let me talk about this real quick. I am so sorry, Terry, I said I was going to be short. I'm sorry. Plan, Detroit and Grand Rapids. So real quick, here's what I mean by that. So those two cities, right now, as far as Grand Rapids is concerned, I will tell you that I've had a very different view of this because I was existing in the same, when I first made it to Grand Rapids 7 years ago, I was in the same building, my office as a vice president. I was in the same building as Ferris State in the Applied Technology Center. So I saw a lot of what Ferris State was. The first thing I found out is that you have a whole bunch of really good people that work in Grand Rapids who are so committed to this institution. But the other thing I found out, just being totally transparent with you, I know Steve has heard me talk about this, is that, and other folks who work in, have so much in Grand Rapids, I found that there wasn't much in terms of a nice cohesion of what we do there. We're spread out. You have Kindle, you've got the ATC, you've got what we do, the great things we do in pharmacy over in downtown. We have some really good things, but I'm not so sure if the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. So before you increase a footprint, you better establish the footprint. And when I say that about Grand Rapids, I mean branding and cohesiveness. When it comes to the cohesiveness, having more togetherness about what we do so that people see a one Ferris State. The visual won't feel like one because pharmacy is over there, but the ATC, that's okay. There's a way that we do that that helps people know that second thing around branding. Ferris State University is in Grand Rapids, and we need to be a stronger visual presence there. I need for people to look up on Division and on Ionia and see that big, huge bulldog head. I want them to know Ferris State is in Grand Rapids. And right now, I'm not sure. I think you could walk down the street right now and pull to the average person in GR and say, hey, can you tell me where Ferris State is? Where I'm trying to get to. And I think some would say, well, I think I saw that on a sign at Kendall. Is Kendall a part? Or they may say, you know, I was on Michigan. I think I saw something. I want to take away the mystery, friends. I want to take away the mystery in Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids needs to know if that is our second largest footprint in the state, which it is, Big Rapids being the first, Grand Rapids is the second, then I want to make sure that footprint is strong and sure for the people of Grand Rapids and Kent County to know Ferris State is here. And once you establish firmer that footprint, well, that's when you start thinking, so how do you expand? What makes sense to expand for that footprint? So the big blue machine over in Allendale. So anyway, the next thing, I won't say that. The other place is Detroit. So I'll just say, from what I've observed as well, we exist in basically about 20 places across the state. But in the largest metropolitan area of the state of Michigan, you don't find a sign or anything that says Ferris State University. Well, we have some charter schools, but you don't find Ferris State University in the largest metropolitan area. And friends, I'll just tell you, in the last 8 weeks, folks from over that side of town have said to me, just had an email this week from another person that said, I don't see anything. I'm happy you're there. I'm an alum and I'm a proud alum. We have thousands of alums over there, thousands. But they are telling me, we don't see you here. We have nothing here. So the question becomes, what do you do about that? Because I think it's a good question. And because of the fact that every other university that I can think of has something in the Detroit area, well, here's the difference. In many cases, we offer much different programs than what they offer. So it's not that you're walking in saying, hey, we're going to duplicate. It's walking in saying, you don't have this, here's what we do. But I will tell you that where that one is going is truly the way I operate. I am not a believer in what I call traditional higher education, where we like to walk into a room and say, hey, we know what you need, here's what you need. I don't believe in that. I believe that you walk in that room and say, hey, we are from Ferris State. Let's sit down and talk about what you need. You tell us. I don't want to make any assumptions in Detroit. I don't want to walk in and say, this is what we're going to do. I need to walk in, we need to walk in, sit down with the leaders there, sit down with that community and say, here's what we do, what can we do with you, and what can we do for you? And let them help us answer that. Because if they answer that with us verbally, typically some of the folks we know already over there, they'll also answer from resources as well. But I feel like we have to have that conversation, friends. We have students right now on this campus, many students from Southeast Michigan. I think they deserve that community. They deserve you, Ferris State. That's just my opinion. And then the last thing is data-driven statewide focus. Just to look at our statewide programs and the good work that happens, look and see what's working. If it's working, what do we do with that? If it's not working, what do we do there as well? When I say working, how is it serving our students? How is it serving those communities? I was talking to Steve the other day, Steve Reifert, and we were having that conversation about the idea of what we do statewide and who is it that said that we're going to do that particular program in that particular area. Here's that conversation. If we provide this program in Traverse City, who is it that said, Ferris State, could you do this? And so if there's an industry or if there is a presence there, a community that says, Ferris State, this is what we need from you, my goodness, we just knock it out of the park. But really doing the data analysis to say, what does that look like? So that everything we do, that we have the data behind it to say, here's the why of what we do. And so I think that's an exciting conversation to have because I think it makes sense for what we can do statewide from this institution. And so you ask vision, this is what you see. Those are the 4 pieces right now. And I'm excited about all 4 of them because I think all 4 of them really hit those 2 words I always talk about. Are you relevant? Are you responsive? That's been my higher education life, friends. I don't care. I was at GRCC. They tell you, he's going to say relevant and responsive. That's just what I believe higher ed should be about. Making sure that what we do with and for our students, our community, each other, is it truly the relevant thing to do? Is it relevant? Does it meet the needs? When we talk about our students, how relevant is our work? Does it meet their needs? When we talk about each other, being relevant to each other, I think makes sense to me. If I'm being relevant to you, I'm going to try to be the best president I can possibly be. Because if I'm going to stay relevant for you, that's what I need to do. And if I need to go and improve that and work on that and have mentor, I need to do what I have to do to make sure I stay relevant to you. Because relevance goes beyond just staying relevant to students, relevant to the community, relevant to our state. It also means that we stay relevant and respectful to each other. And that idea of responsiveness is all over that piece. Because being responsive says that when I'm relevant to you, I'm going to be responsive to you as well. And it's not going to take me forever to respond. Because we're known for that, aren't we? We in higher ed are known to take forever just to get anything done. I don't think that's you. I don't think that should be us. I have that saying, I think it sometimes takes us in higher ed, takes you 6 weeks, 6 months just to make sure you buy a pencil. Because it has to go through all these channels and everyone has to, no. That idea of responsiveness says that we can be responsive to each other, to our students. People come to us, Ferris, I need you to, well, how does that look? It doesn't mean that we have to become everything to everybody, but it does mean that being relevant and responsive to everything and everybody, that's where it goes, how we stay in those spaces. Because I think that's what our founder was thinking as well. I think that's where he was. Because I think in his messages, when we talk about Founders Day, it all goes back to the one who actually was the first to put this whole thing in motion on this campus. Because I think that's where he was. When I came here, I said, oh my goodness, I get to be president of an institution that I feel like its founder was way, way ahead of his time. I mean, you put his sayings and some of his focus into 2022, my goodness, fits into the conversation perfectly, doesn't it? But that's where we have to stay, friends. And I have to tell you, I'm a person that I think the way we get there is, like I keep saying, it's about a we and not a me. It's about how civil we are to each other. It's about civility. It's about respectfulness when we agree and respectfulness when we disagree. Because that is the only way. Well, our students deserve that, don't they? Because if we're not that way, that's who ends up getting hurt, friends. You may want to, we may want to think, no, but it doesn't mean that we can't disagree. My goodness. I think that 3 places that you ought to be able to have a civil discourse and conversation, this is just pink opinion here. I think there are about 3 places, maybe 4, that you always ought to be able to have a civil conversation and discourse. I think in your home, that you always should be able to have that with each other. You got to be able to get there and then still be able to have dinner together that night, and it's okay. Well, maybe the next night. But you ought to be able to do that at home. I'm a believer, my personal opinion, you ought to be able to do that in your church home. You ought to be able to have a good conversation about things at your church, at your faith house, and still be able to feel that you have fellowship. I believe in that. But I also believe that among a few other things, and a few other places, you ought to be able to do that on a public university campus. Because we are that higher learning institution where public discourse ought to be something that we are experts at driving conversation, yet be able to do that in a civil, with civility, respect. We ought to be able to do that. That's who I am, friends. You'll always hear me come back to that. Because if I don't expect everyone to always agree with me, and Lord knows, you won't always agree. But I sure hope we can sit down and talk about it. And I sure hope once you understand why I do what I do or what we did, I sure hope we can get up and still go over to the Rock and have lunch and be able to get along. Because we have to show, I believe, we need to, as an institution, show that to our students and to our community. That Ferris State University is one, that this institution can have that and do that in a respectful, civil way. I'm so determined on that, friends. I said last night, and I'm going to close here, I'm sorry. I said last night to our friends over at Crankers, I've spent a long career where many times I've found myself spending a whole lot of time with a lot of the negativity and not spending enough time with my rock stars on my campus. The people who say, you know what? And those aren't all, don't get me wrong, those aren't people who just always agree with Bill. No, that's not it. But we spend a whole lot of time and not enough time with those people who are the ones we always lean on and rely on because they're just knocking it out. They're saying, you know what? I'm getting this done. I want to make sure I'm honoring all of you who are digging it out every day. I want to work with you and say, how do I support you? Because that is going to get us, and it's going to get our students in an incredible place. I am so excited about that. I hope you are too. I hope you have this feeling and this vision to say, you know what? Let's see what we can do. Let's see what this next iteration of Ferris State University looks like. We get to be on that cusp. We get to do that. That's on us. That is on us. Happy Founders Day. Happy new semester. Happy new beginning, friends. But I got to tell you, I want you to hop on because it's going to be a fun ride. Thank you very much.